All right, our vocabulary deep dive today is going to be exploring some of the content vocabulary that we've been reading in the words amputate and amputation, mutilate and mutilation. So here are some excerpts from page 86 in the Boys' War that we read recently. And I'm going to read these two different sentences, and we're going to be looking at the words amputated and mutilation. As you can see, they are in bold. While imprisoned, John Delhaney happened to meet a Union Army surgeon. He is a very fine-looking man and has his hand in a sling, for yesterday, when operating upon a gangrene wound, the knife with which he was operating cut his finger slightly, and, fearing infection, he very sensibly had his own finger immediately amputated. And then the second one. Most soldiers looked upon the doctor's work as useless mutilation heaped on top of injury, and the fact that large numbers of the injured would linger in agonizing pain for days only to die did not enhance the reputation of the medical profession. So we see these two words, amputated and mutilation. And I'll remind you that last time you did a deep dive, we were looking at these suffixes ate and ation. So I'm going to remind us what those two suffixes mean. Do you remember? If you don't, that's okay. I will review it anyway. This suffix ate at the end of a word means to make or to do, and it would be a verb at the end. So amputate would be something that you do. Mutilate would be something that you do. It's a verb. When we add ation to the end of the word, it means the results of making, and then it would be a noun. So amputation would be the result of something being amputated, and mutilation would be the result of something being mutilated. They would be considered nouns. So we're going to look back at those two passages from page 86 of the Boys' War to figure out some clues for what these words amputated and mutilation might mean. So if you want to turn to page 86 in the Boys' War, or you can look on here, and I took a screenshot of it for us. So I'm actually not going to reread this whole thing, but I am going to point out some of the main clues that can help us know what amputated means to start with. So when I read through here, I remember them saying that there was lots of injuries, it was unfortunate, and then down here I saw this sentence, and if a wound to an arm or leg seemed too severe or became infected, the usual course of action was to cut off the limb. And then later down here we see the word amputate. It said they had tents for those that were worst off, and where they were amputating arms and legs. There was a washout back of one tent that had a wagon load of arms and legs. And so all of these context clues can help us figure out what this word amputated means. And we can see this one from before where the operator nicked his finger with a knife, and he nicked his finger slightly, and fearing infection, he very sensibly had his own finger immediately amputated. And so using all of these clues, what do you think the word amputate might mean? Keep it in your mind because we'll double check. All right, we're going to look at the word mutilation then. And we see this word only one time, but we know that it has to be related to amputate somehow. Most soldiers looked upon the doctor's work as useless mutilation heaped on top of injury. And so in some way, we see that even though they were injured, they were somehow mutilated on top of that. And so what do you think that word mutilation might mean? We will take a look at this right next. So we can actually look to word roots to help us figure out what these words might mean. So the Latin word root of amputate is actually putare. And the original definition of putare, that word, refers to pruning or trimming the branches of a tree. If you're pruning something, you're cutting off parts of the tree so that it can grow better later, or you're trimming off parts of the tree. So that is one of the word roots for amputate. Can that help us figure out what this means, including the context clues from before? The word root of mutilate is mutilare, and the original definition refers to cutting off a limb of a tree. Very interesting how these are very similar, and it seems like they're connected. So do you have a guess at what the word mutilate and what the word amputate might mean? Let's look at what they mean right now. Amputate means to cut off. Is that similar to what you said? To cut off. And that is very similar to this word root of pruning or trimming. If you're trimming branches of a tree, you're cutting them off. Mutilation means the act of destroying or cutting off a needed part. And so these words are very similar, but how is mutilation a little bit different? Yeah, amputate just means cutting off, but mutilation means you're cutting something off that is needed, a needed part. And so we see that this word amputate maybe might be necessary, but mutilation more refers to something that would maybe be unnecessary and maybe it caused more harm. All right, so your assignment today is going to be you're going to be filling in these last two sections of handout 7D. So can you get your handout 7D out, please? And you should have the last two sections on here. You are going to be adding the words amputated, mutilated, amputation, and mutilation to this chart, and then finding a sentence from the text where this word is used. Now you can find the word amputated or amputation. I already gave you quotes that have these in there, so you guys can just copy down these sentences from before, and you guys can copy those into the box that's asking you for a sentence, and then make sure you're filling in both of these definitions and then write a sentence of your own. Again, I have the definitions of at least amputated and mutilation. I have both of those definitions here. And then you should use your understanding of what those suffixes ate and ation means to help you figure out definitions for the other two words that we didn't have definitions for. Or honestly, you can look them up on Google. Google is a great resource. So put the definitions for both, copy down those sentences from the text, and then write your own sentence using one of these words in the amputation one, and then one of these words in the mutilation row. If you have any questions, ask your teacher, and then take a picture of it and turn it into Schoology.